In this video, we're finally going to be taking a look at the All-Terrain Tactical Enforcer, or ATTE that it's more commonly known as. This is the very first animated Clone Wars item that I'm reviewing on my channel. It's been a long time coming, ever since I started recording YouTube videos about 4 years ago now at this point. This is an item I always wanted to get featured on the channel, but I wanted to wait for a special occasion for it. Wanted a better setup for it and wasn't too sure how I wanted to go about recording it. But now I'm at the point I just want to record it as is, and if anything we can do more videos in the future featuring it. And also about a year ago I decided, well, I'll wait for a very particular occasion for this, and that occasion is now, because this is August of 2023 and is the 15th anniversary coming up here really soon for the Clone Wars animated movie. And it's also been about the 15th anniversary of the debut of the animated Clone Wars line, which today remains one of my personal favorite lines at the time, and even to this day. I love all the action figures that came out during that time. Lots of great ones, and lots of grails in there too. And lots of grails that we'll probably never ever see ever again. Maybe Eth Koth, for example, and Sarapass, and Embo, you name it. There's so many characters that came out in the Clone Wars line that we'll probably never see the light of day again, and a lot of those action figures still hold up really well today. So for this month of August of 2023, I'll be putting more of a focus on the Clone Wars animated line as a way to celebrate it. But for this first video featuring that, no better item to pick than the ATTE, which today is one of the most impressive vehicles that Hasbro's ever made. I'm personally more impressed with this than even like the Ghost or even the Sail Barge. I'm more impressed with this. I think this is peak Hasbro. So story, I've had this in my collection since 2008. So it's seen a lot over the years. Interesting story about it. So the first time I actually discovered that the ATT was made, I went to Walmart shortly after the debut of the Clone Wars line, and they had pallets of these just stacked up in the middle of Walmart over by a toy aisle, just across the way from where all the action figures were. So I first looked at this and, you're in awe that, oh, I can't believe Hasbro actually made this. I never thought they would actually do it. And then some guy, probably his early 30s or so, he rolls in with his cart in front of me and starts eyeing it as well, and it must have been his wife behind him. Turned around and said, honey, you cut in front of this guy. And I'm looking at this, and then he looks at me, and then I look at him, and then he ended up moving out of the way. But that's just something that always stuck out to me. And this was August of 2008, and then by Christmas I ended up getting this. So if I had to narrow it down to a few items in my collection that I'm most proud of, or is most sentimental to me, or most impressive to me for that matter, this baby is definitely one of the ones that's going to go in that list. Has a lot of memories. It's had a lot of use over the years, and I still think it's one of the best things Hasbro's ever made. So I don't have the box anymore for obvious reasons. Not too many people are going to keep a box this large over 15 years. But I will show you the instruction manual real quick. I'm actually surprised I kind of kept this over the years. And something else I've kept is stickers. I've actually never put the stickers on the ATT here. I know that at least these three here go in the back. Not too sure about those two, but I know the instruction manual notes it right there. I don't think there's really anything too fancy to look at in here. It just kind of shows off what it's all about and all the features behind it. Might as well browse through it real quick, make sure I don't miss anything as we go through this. We really don't get booklets with these so much anymore from Hasbro with vehicles we do get. I know we don't, of course, we don't get as many vehicles these days, but the few we do, it seems like it's very basic. Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much all there is to show with that. Stickers are pretty cool. I might put these on someday. I've never attempted to. A lot of it is because it gets kind of tedious putting a lot of these stickers on, and then you want to make sure it lines up right and it's all aligned, and you only have about one shot to get it right. So oftentimes I just end up not doing it. So what do we look at first? I guess we'll just move this around and take a look at it from the front first. It is pretty light. As you can see, you can pick it up with one hand. I would say that's probably around, I don't know, maybe 2 feet long. Just to give you some perspective. About an arm's length. So we'll go through the turret here up first. So the trooper that you see there is actually the turbo tank gunner, and this is the one that came with the clone turbo tank that came out a year later, which I have as well, and I'll be reviewing that soon too. It's a pretty nice turret. It does rotate around, and it does have some electronics that we'll mess with here in a second. One thing I'll note about this is you can see the missile he has. It's not entirely plugged in, and that's because the spring is very weak on that, and after so long, eventually it'll just pop out on its own, like that. So I would recommend, if you have one of these or you want to get one of them, just don't push it in all the way, and eventually the spring will release it anyway. So this can rotate all around, and as you can see, it has the computer there. And we'll turn on the electronics, which the switch is right here. And I haven't had batteries in it for a very long time now, and I just put batteries back in it. And fortunately, the electronics do still work. And you do have this button back here, as you can see it. Let's see if we can turn this light off a little bit. Get a better look at it. So that's kind of neat. Really like the paint job on this as well. Everything looks really nice. So for the front here, of course you have the cockpit, which does lift up, and you can put a clone in there. Pretty interesting feature about this. I don't know if that was intended or not, but the blaster there has a little weapons rack on both sides. Not sure if that's what it is, but that's what I use it for, and it works. So in case you don't want to lose your troopers DC 17 or 15 or whatever you have, you can always put it right there beside them. And it clicks into place pretty good. Paint is a little smeared on mine. It's always been like that since I had it. So I guess that's one unique thing about mine, that if I threw this in a pile with hundreds of other similar tanks, I'd be able to point mine out simply because of that. So he does have these 4 turrets here, which they all kind of rotate together. And they all just shoot out like that. You can't rotate them in different directions. It's just how I have it, so they're a little more consistent and even. But if you work with it a little bit, you can move them up and rotate each one independently from one another, as you can see there. But you do have to hold it down from the rest of them, that way they don't all rotate together. So there's that. Let's Move this around again. The next compartment here is this side door, which opens up there, and it reveals inside controls. Now this is the clone that the tank comes with. Just a standard white clone, nothing too fancy. And he was also repacked in so many of the initial waves of the Clone Wars as well. There is a clean version out there. This one's a dirty version. And we'll look more at him here in a second. So those stickers that you see on there were already there when I got this. As you can see, there's 4 seats. There's also a panel there on the other side. So if you got 4 clones to fit in there, you can make it happen. So I have done this before. Most of the realistic interpretations of the clones, or any figure for that matter, do fit into this. It's not just Clone Wars specific. So if you don't have any of the Clone Wars animated figures, but you really want this, and you want to know if your realistic clones can fit into this, they definitely can. It looks like he has a small rack there as well. I just have a small weapon here, and it kind of works, I guess. And it has some stairs, so you can simulate them getting up into it. So as for the clone here, he didn't come with any weapons, as far as I recall. If he did, he just came with one of these, if anything, which is just the animated style of the DC-17, which are really nice. I still think these hold up really well, and some of the best DC-17s that Hasbro ever made. And unfortunately, mine hasn't really yellowed. I mean, it's discolored a little bit around the torso there, and around the codpiece. But it's not too bad compared to some of the samples I've seen. That's one thing about these animated Clone Wars figures, especially the initial ones. They often yellowed around where the crotch is and in the abdomen. Unfortunately, I don't have too many of those that really did that. So for the articulation, he does have a bunch at the head, and then hinged shoulders and elbows and hinged wrists, hinged torso, swivel hips, hinged knees, and hinged ankles, which at the time was really impressive articulation. The Clone Wars line definitely was innovative as far as the articulation is concerned. And he has these red symbols on each of his shoulder armor there. And he fits pretty good. So I would recommend putting this flap down first, then putting that into place. And then of course, I have the same thing here as well. So next, we'll take a look at some of the electronics that this has. So you have those 3 buttons there, and each one is totally unique. Some of them have more than one option. We'll just go through each one. So that's for the turret. As you can see, it does light up at the console there. And that seems to be the only one for that.
All forward positions are advancing. Approaching droid perimeter. We are undetected. All units, fire at will. All units attack. The droid army is in full retreat. All forward positions are advancing.
So I really like that option, and I'm really happy that Hasbro used some of the Tartakovsky clone lines. One of them, the all units attack, that's obviously Commander Cody from Season 2. So it's really nice to see that even with the new Dave Filoni Clone Wars line, they still utilize a lot of that Tartakovsky elements. So I really like that. Glad they did it. The Turbo Tank has some voice lines too, I think. I know it has electronics, but we'll go through that when that review comes. And then for the last one here, it's basically just the ATT walking. And then if you want to save on your batteries, you can just push that switch there. So I really miss electronics on a lot of the vehicles that we've gotten. You would think with the Ghost being such an elite vehicle that Hasbro's making, and the biggest one they've ever made, that they would do electronics on it, even if it's just some simple ones. So that's one element I really do miss about Hasbro Star Wars. So what's next? Get some closer looks at this. So for the legs here, you can rotate these around. And before we look at the back here, I will tell an interesting story about these two middle legs here. So when this initially came out, these pop out of the place really easy. Mine not so much unless I move it a certain way. Oh, yeah, this one does. So as you can see, it pops out pretty easy. And that was a common issue with this tank at the time. And a lot of it is because of the pressure of it sitting down, and then the latches kind of bow out a little bit to where it doesn't sit into place very well. So what you could have done, and I didn't learn this until years later, you could actually mail away to get replacement legs for your ATTE, and it'll be the proper ones that stay into place and they won't pop out easy. There has been times I've picked this up, and then maybe not so much this leg, but definitely that one has popped out as I'm picking it up. So that is one thing to keep an eye out for. I do think you could get on eBay and find the replacement legs that some people sell by itself every once in a while. Obviously, you can't mail into Hasbro anymore and ask for them, which you could. Unfortunately, you can't. So that's an interesting bit of history about this tank that a lot of people don't know about. I didn't learn about this until years later. If I did know about it at the time, I would have sent away for it. But unfortunately, by then it was too late. And each leg can be articulated. Of course, you have the joint here and here. And then you have the bottom one here. And you can get in various poses. We might mess with that here in a little bit. I try to keep everything as flat as possible. No awkward angles about it. Alright, now for the big thing. So the back here also opens up. And you have these two turrets here, which do fire as well. It does have a little bit of a kick to it. So that pops into place. So then what you do here, it does have some electronics to it. Push this button here. I really like that feature. It's so cool. So you can store all your clones back here, and this is basically their mini armory and transport. So I decided to put my Coruscant Guard back here. Thyre, Jack, Reese, Commander Stone, and Commander Fox. Some of my favorite clone troopers, by the way. And I really love that very first episode of the TV series, the Ambush. That's actually probably my favorite Clone Wars episode. I really like the interaction between Thyre, Jack, Reese, and Yoda in that episode. And those three clones are some of my favorites to date. We never saw them again in the Clone Wars series, which is a shame. And of course, we know Thyre. It is the same Thyre that's featured in Revenge of the Sith. But as far as the other two here, not too sure. And I think Commander Fox, I do think he has a story of, or an ultimate fate that is. And as for Stone, I do recall he's in season 2 for an episode or two, and I think that's all we ever really saw of him. All these will get individual reviews eventually. We'll just show them off how they look in this right now. So they do all have foot pegs, as you can see there behind Stone. Various foot pegs that you can keep them into place, and I do recommend using them because if you don't, they, as you're transporting this tank around, and if it gets lopsided or falls on its side or something, they fall off and it makes a big mess on the inside. So interesting hidden details about this as well. As you can see next to Thyre, there is a weapons rack. So I put all these spare DC-17 rifles that I have right there, and on this side I put all my extra Royal Guard staffs. I have quite a few of those. And as you can see next to Fox there, that's what it looks like. Very simple. And depending what DC-17 you have, you could probably stack 2 in the same one. If you got some of these Clone Wars rifles, they're thin enough to where you might be able to do it, but if you have plenty of the ones that we used to get way back in the day, like that, it might be able to fit one. And also you have this side compartment here where you can pretty much put anything you want. This side I usually just put all my extra shorter DC-17 rifles. I have quite a few in there. And this side I usually put my spare lightsaber hilts, and looks like I have some of the, oh yeah, these are, I always get confused. DC-15 rifles, DC-15 rifles, and these are DC-17. And there's some spare lightsaber hilts. General Grievous's blaster. And an extra Darth Vader hilt here. This is Darth Vader hilt that comes with Revenge of the Sith Black Series 3 3/4" Darth Vader, which is one of my favorites to date. And there's also an Imperial pistol in there as well. So, what else is there to tell about this? There is a spot in the back here, as you can see, these turret controls where you can put a figure right there. And I've never really been able to do it, and especially right now with how I have it set up with Fox's blaster and Thyre's rifle being in the way as well. But that is an option. At some point I might do an in-depth video as to exactly how many figures you can fit in this thing. I figure you could probably fit 3, then 4, then be 7, and then 11, 15, 16, 17. Maybe if you really push for it, you could fit over 20 action figures in this. But I've never really stuffed it quite like that. Sometimes I do use this as like a storage unit. I'll admit, before I set up for this video, I did have all my Troop Builder pack clones from the recent Troop Builder pack with the Clone Lieutenant and the 3 others. I had my 2 sets of those stored in here, and each one fit. So that is an option for you. What else is put in the back here? Some of the stickers go on those panels there. Then the big round one goes right there. So it's really nice that Hasbro did that. Then you can close this up. And as you can see, you have these stairs here, and they do have some pegs in them as well. So you can simulate them as coming out of the transport There's some on those steps there. And they fit in the place really nice. What else is there to tell about this? I'm trying to make sure I didn't miss anything. I think we pretty much covered everything at this point. Just taking a good look at this. And as I said, you can rotate the legs around. As you can see, you'd have to finesse with it a little bit to get it to work. Let's rotate it around, take a look at this side. Oh, as you can see there, that leg pops out. It's kind of like Darth Vader's TIE Fighter, where the tabs there just don't really want to stay in the place. Same thing on this side. There's a Republic symbol there. Well, I think for the purposes of this video, I've showed you about everything there is to show. Suppose I could show you the bottom of it here, or at least try to do the best I can. Like I said, I might do another video featuring this at some point. We'll see how many action figures we can fit into it, or maybe I'll make a diorama scene with it. Maybe do one interacting with the clone turbo tank. So, what more can I say about this? Like I said, this is one of the grails in my collection. I absolutely love this. It could very well be my personal favorite item in my entire collection. I think this is peak Star Wars collecting. At the time, this was really impressive. Everyone was in awe about it. And it was one of the biggest vehicles Hasbro ever made to date at that time. And even to this day, even with the sail barge and the Ghost and the Razor Crest, I still think it's one of the most impressive things Hasbro ever made. And it has electronics, which is something a lot of the newer stuff doesn't really have. You could fit a whole lot of clones in it, and the Clone Wars line gave us so many cool things that we'll never see again. I really wish Hasbro would repack a lot of these Clone Wars animated figures. There's some that I am missing that I really want to get a hold of, but they're really expensive at this point, $50 to $100 even. I would say I have somewhere around 40 or 50 of the animated Clone Wars action figures. And I do have all the clone commanders and clone captains that they made, and I have been thinking about doing a video on that of like every clone commander from the Clone Wars animated line and the captains as well. So perhaps I'll do that at some point. One thing I am lacking in is a lot of the CIS characters. I do have like a lot of the main ones like Count Dooku, Grievous, Sidious, the really rare Sidious, and Ventress, but I'm missing a lot of droids. So that's something I hope to catch up on in the future. So would I recommend this tank for your collection? I totally would. As far as Star Wars action figure vehicles go, yes, it's expensive, but in the grand scheme of things, for the value you're getting for this, I don't think it's too bad. You might be able to find one loose for a couple $100, and even if you get one brand new, it might be like the same price that they're asking for the Ghost right now. So if you're really not interested in the Ghost at all, but you want to spend $500, you could easily find an ATT if that's one thing you want. And I would say that this is an item that not too many people are going to argue with having for their collection or wanting for their collection. So I totally recommend it. If you're on a budget, like I said, you might be able to find one loose. Oftentimes, though, when buying this stuff loose on sites like eBay, it's going to have missing accessories. I don't think I'm missing any accessories in this video. If I am, though, I will be able to feature that again at some point, and we'll note that then. I think I pretty much showed you everything there is to show. Between this and the turbo tank, I don't think one is really more expensive than the other. Maybe the turbo tank's just slightly more. I have seen that go for like $500 brand new. And we'll be sure to do a comparison between this and that at some point as well. But to this day, I still think this is one of Hasbro's crowning achievements. It's a 100% item. I got no complaints about it, other than just getting the legs fixed, but that's something that's manageable. And like I said, you might be able to get on eBay and be lucky enough to find someone selling the replacement legs if that's something you desire. I have seen some listings every now and then, but then I just, for whatever reason, I decided not to get it. Maybe because of price, or I said I would hold off for another time. But at some point I might go ahead and get those replacement legs if I see them for a decent price. What more can I say about this? There's just so many great things I could say about this tank, and I could probably go on for hours about it. But go ahead and get one for yourself, and you'll see what I mean. Like I said, too, this tank has a lot of memories for me. It's been with me for 15 years now at this point, and I've cherished it since. And I hope I have many, many, many more years of this being in my collection. I think for now, that's all I'll really say about this. So, as I mentioned, for the month of August of 2023, we'll be featuring more Clone Wars action figures. So keep an eye out for that. And if you haven't already, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. That way you know when those get posted, and for future videos as well. And check out some of the links in the description as well, if you haven't already. With that being said, thanks for watching.